new world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Now, to some of the listeners who are listening live right now, you'll be considering this hour number 3 of tonight's broadcast. To those listening on the archives or listening in the YouTube archives, wherever you listen, the Orion archives, my archives in Federal Jack, the YouTube archives, wherever, it'll be labeled as a separate broadcast. It'll be labeled as the 12th and not the 11th. It was last night's broadcast going from 10 to midnight was 1/11/2013. Hour number 3 here, even though I'm still live, is going to be, I had Jimmy set it up as a separate broadcast, so hour number 3 is going to be considered in the archives as a separate 1 hour long broadcast. And I'm going to start it off with a time date stamp of January 12th, 2013, because it is now actually 12:08 a.m. So it is technically January 12th, 2013. So welcome back if you're listening live for hour number 3. And if you're listening in the archives, rebroads or whatever, welcome to the special broadcast here on this Saturday, super early Saturday morning edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. Now, what is this special hour going to be about? Well, I want to talk about gun control again. I have no choice. I'm sorry that I have to keep pounding this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again over the airwaves, but it has to be taken care of because apparently either people aren't paying attention or maybe, I actually don't think it's that. I think too many people are paying attention, and that's the problem. And that's why you see a larger amount of garbage coming out of the mainstream media. And if they didn't fear you waking up and seeing through their crap, there wouldn't be this constant attack. They have to convince you and get you prepped for what they want to do. Remember, at the bottom of all of this, at the end of it, we're the ones that have to give up our power to them, right? We have to say, okay, go ahead, take our stuff. We'll be your slaves. It's for the better of the people. Go ahead. So they have to convince us and get us in that mindset. And that's why you see this massive surge of, anti-gun programming, just people coming out constantly. We need to ban this. We need to ban that. We need to ban this. We need to ban that. And, Piers Morgan coming on every day. Every broadcast he does is about gun control and banning guns. And I don't want to take your guns, but I do want to take your guns. He speaks out of both sides of his mouth. Well, he got his ass handed to him handed to him last night. Now, well, technically it's not last night because it's Saturday morning. So Thursday night, he had a guest on by the name of Ben Shapiro. And he's, if I remember correctly, Ben works for Breitbart. And I think he ends up blogging and writing for other people too, or at least doing commentary or whatever. But I know he does work with Breitbart. And he had him on. And for lack of a better term, I mean, this guy skewered him, and he didn't lose his temper. He didn't lose pace. He didn't even bat an eyelash. I mean, out of any of the confrontations, I have to say, Mr. Shapiro, well done, sir. Just, I mean, wow. This guy, and I'm going to play the entire audio for you, ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't heard it, because it's just, this is the way to debate somebody like Piers Morgan. And I know people, he's a bully or whatever, and there's a way to stand up to him. And I know it's tempting to scream and yell in his face, but remember, it's not about Piers. They want us to make it about that limey bastard. They want us to focus our anger and our energy on him. So not only is he, as Alex Jones appropriately titled him, a hatchet man for the New World Order, but he's also the focus of your anger. Instead of being really pissed off at who we should be pissed off at, Piers steps up to the plate as I'll be the focus of attention. Okay? It's almost like a living straw man argument if you look at it. But I'm gonna play the audio so you can hear Ben Shapiro. He utterly destroys this garbage argument that he's been bringing with every one of his guests, whether it be Larry Pratt, Alex Jones, or anybody else. It's the same garbage argument, which I've talked about before myself. I dissected it on air myself. Then I went and played Ben Swan a couple days later, right? I think it was the last broadcast I actually did. I played Ben Swan, right? And I played his take on it, which was pretty much the same thing. But Ben actually broke it down way better than I did because he actually got into the numbers and broke it down. I mean, within like 4.5 minutes, he totally destroyed Piers Morgan's argument. Done. I would love to see him debate Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan won't. After he got schooled by Shapiro, I doubt he would ever want to debate Ben Swan. But I still think we should put it out there and put the idea to Ben and say, hey, dude, we support you. We think you should debate him because you would school him and wreck him. And dude, 4.5 minute broadcast, and he destroys his entire garbage argument that he's been attacking everybody with all week. But I digress. I'll let you hear what Ben Shapiro has to say about it, and I'm going to get into a few other things too. I'm going to show you an example of how somebody can defend themselves properly with a firearm. So I have to jam all of this audio. Okay, I have to jam a ton of this. And I have a bunch of stuff for you into this little hour. So I'm going to quit ranting and yakking, and I'm going to let you hear some of the clips I have lined up for you. That's why I had Jimmy line this special broadcast up. So first, since it's right on the everybody's mind. It's the first thing it's the last thing I was just ranting about. It's the first thing I'm going to play. Here's the audio of Ben Shapiro destroying Piers Morgan and his garbage argument. Anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment argument. Just wait. Just listen to it. I swear to God, this is audio gold. Some of the best debating I've ever heard.
On guns, my next guest has strong words for me. He says, I'm off the rails on guns in America. Ben Shapiro is editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies, How the Left's Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silences Americans. So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument, and we can have a discussion.
And by the way, so the listeners are clear, what he just did, and I know you can't see the video. If you see it on YouTube or whatever, you'll see it. But he hands him a copy. It's a little book version of the entire Constitution, and I think the Bill of Rights and everything's in there.
About whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
Well, I made it very clear what I want to do, which is exactly what Mark Kelly wants to do. And in fact, rather than address
let's talk about that.
Rather than address your comments to me about standing on the graves of children at Sandy Hook, you can address them to Mark Kelly, because he agrees with everything that I've been saying, because he feels the same way, as does his wife. They're gun owners. They both respect the Second Amendment of the Constitution. They don't want to take away anybody's right to defend themselves with guns.
Well, they want to take away certain types of guns, obviously.
They want to take away assault weapons, which are capable, with magazines that we saw at Aurora and Sandy Hook, of unleashing a ridiculous amount of bullets.
Well, this is a question I wanted to ask you, Piers, because I've seen you talk about assault weapons a lot, and I've seen Mark Kelly talk about assault weapons. The vast majority of murders in this country that are committed with guns are not committed with assault weapons, they're committed with handguns. Okay, so are you willing to ban handguns in this country, across the country?
No, that's not what I'm asking for.
Why not?
Let me ask you.
Don't you care about the kids who are being killed in Chicago as much as the kids in Sandy Hook?
Yes, I do.
Then why don't you care about banning the handguns in Chicago?
We'll come to that. Let me ask you this. What was the weapon used at Aurora in the movie theater?
It was an assault rifle, sure.
Okay. What was the weapon used in the Oregon shopping mall?
I believe it was an assault rifle, correct?
Okay. What was the weapon used at Sandy Hook?
It was an assault rifle.
What was the weapon used at the incident around Christmas when the firemen were lured to their deaths, the New York State firemen?
And bought illegally? That was an assault rifle.
Right, so the last 4 mass shootings in America were all the assault rifles.
And the vast
that is the reason, Mr. Shapiro. And you can smirk at me, and you can laugh at me.
I'm not smirking.
And you can accuse me of standing on the graves of dead children.
And being a bully, yes.
But that is the reason that people like me and Mark Kelly and Gabrielle Giffords want to have assault weapons like that removed from civilian hands.
Your passion on the issue doesn't really justify the rationale for why you want to ban assault weapons, but not handguns. You don't understand why
we want to remove the preferred weapon of choice, these killing machines, from the hands of deranged young men.
All I'm asking is for you to be philosophically consistent. If what you're worried about is the removal of killing machines from the hands of deranged young people, then maybe we should talk about a blanket gun ban. And let's get to what the left really wants here. And you say that you're for the Second Amendment.
Why is it about left or right? Because in Britain this never is about left or right, this issue. Why is it here?
Well, we can talk about Britain in a second. I think the reason that it's about left and right here is because fundamentally the right believes that the basis for the Second Amendment, and they believe in the Second Amendment, the basis for the Second Amendment is not really about self-defense, and it's not about hunting. It is about resistance to government tyranny. That's what the founders said, and that's what the right believes in this country.
Which tyranny are you fearing yourself?
I fear the possibility of a tyranny rising in this country in the next 50 to 100 years. Let me tell you something, Piers. The fact that my grandparents and great-grandparents in Europe didn't fear that is why they are now ashes in Europe. So this kind of leftist revisionist history, where there's never any fear of democracy going usurpacious or tyrannical, is just that. It's fictitious.
Just to clarify your position then, the answer to Sandy Hook, as it was to Aurora, as it was to Gabrielle Giffords, as it was to Columbine, Virginia Tech, is you do nothing. Is that your position?
And that's not my position.
What is your position?
My position is that we have to calibrate laws that are designed to get guns out of the hands of bad people and keep guns in the hands of good people who want to buy them. This idea of more guns versus less guns.
How do you do that?
Well, I think one of the ways that you do that is by better screening for mental illness. I think that you do better background checks.
Was Adam Lanza's mother a good person?
I don't know whether she's a good person or a bad person. I know she's irresponsible with her guns.
Has there been any evidence to suggest she was not a good person?
No, but there's been significant evidence.
So by your criteria, she would have been... Wait a minute. By your criteria of the good people should be allowed the guns and the bad people shouldn't, she would have been allowed the guns.
She was an irresponsible person. She didn't keep her guns locked up. And that should be against the law. If you have a mentally ill person in your house,
so then
we're talking about laws that we can both agree on here. I don't know why you're disagreeing with me on this.
Then she becomes a bad person, does she?
Well, no, it's not a matter of morally good versus morally bad. You set the criteria,
good and bad. So is she good or bad?
You're right, Piers. I should have said responsible versus irresponsible. That's correct.
Okay, so she goes from good to bad.
No, she goes from responsible to irresponsible.
Let's take a break. Let's come back and talk more about this because we don't agree. That's Ben Shapiro, editor-at-large at Breitbart.com and the author of Bullies. Do you believe that if you had an assault weapon ban, statistics prove that you could dry up the supply of these guns and make them less accessible to criminals?
I don't know whether you could make them less accessible to criminals. Let's assume that's the case, that you could make them less accessible to criminals. Again, my question remains for you, Piers, and I'm still waiting for an answer from the left on this. They say they're pro-Second Amendment. Why don't you want to ban handguns? If you really want to solve the quote-unquote gun violence problem in America, go after all the guns. Why just stop yourself at assault rifles?
Because I believe and respect an American's right under the Second Amendment of the Constitution that you kindly brought in to defend themselves with a handgun or a pistol. What I don't understand...
And most of the murders are committed with those weapons.
What I don't... Well, as we just established, because I talked you through them, the last 4 mass shootings in America...
Adam Lanza had 2 pistols on him.
Well,
he didn't just have an assault rifle. If he hadn't had the assault rifle...
He didn't use them, as you know.
And if he hadn't had the assault rifle, he wouldn't have used them?
Explain to me this. I can't buy this. This is 6 packets of Sudafed. They're one of the many companies that make this particular ingredient, which you can't buy legally in America. There we are, 6 packets. That is illegal for me to buy in that quantity in Walmart, say. But I can buy an AR-15 military-style assault rifle. I can then, as we saw with Holmes, the shooter in Aurora, go and get 6,000 rounds of ammunition from the internet, and I can go and blow up a movie theater. Do you think that's right?
Well, we can talk drug laws another time, but I think that the question is...
Does that make sense to you?
No, I think what would make sense is laws that are calibrated to solve the problem. So if you think that the problem is only assault rifles...
Which guns would you remove?
I think the ones that have largely been removed from the market, fully automatic weapons, would be a good start. I think that...
You wouldn't remove any semi-automatics at all?
And no, because semi-automatic just means that when you pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out.
Do you understand how
basic revolvers are essentially...
Do you understand how an AR-15 performs when it's been modified and has a magazine with...
I do. I saw it in the North Hollywood shootout. And you know what? It was illegal to do that, and people did it anyway. We have 12 million illegal immigrants in this country. We're not able to stop people from coming illegally into this country over the southern border into places like California, where I live normally. I think you'd be very hard-pressed to stop guns from coming across that border illegally as well. I mean, California has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation.
Would you want every American to have an AR-15?
No, not every American.
Who would you stop?
I would stop anyone with a criminal background. I would stop anybody with a history of mental illness. And I would stop, and I would ask, and not ask, I would require that people who have somebody who has a criminal background or a history of mental illness in the household keep that gun locked up and safe.
What about the background checks? 40% of all gun sales in America now, gun trades, are not covered by background checks.
I believe in background checks.
For everybody? For everybody. So there should be a database, a national register?
If it's not public. I don't like what happened with the Journal News putting out gun permits, which allows criminals to target particular homes.
When the NRA came out today after their meeting with the White House and just said we're just not prepared to entertain effectively any kind of new gun restrictions. What do you think of that?
What's astonishing to me is the left's attack on the NRA, because the NRA is, they don't receive a dime of public dollars. They're an interest group. I don't see, it's funny. The left, they like to talk also about violent video games, for example.
Can you stop framing it as left or right? Because I don't have a horse in the race. I'm going to vote either way.
Oh, come on, Piers. You tend to be more to the left. We all understand.
The NRA, as you know, are a very active and well-funded and powerful body. And what they do...
Why are you asking... I just want to finish the point and then... Sorry, this is very quick, I promise. The point that I'm making is this. There's been a lot of talk by a lot of people about video game violence. I haven't seen David Gregory interviewing the head of the ACLU and saying it's your broad interpretation of the First Amendment that's responsible for this. But people are bringing on the NRA and saying it's your broad interpretation of the Second Amendment that's responsible for this. They're an interest group. If you want legislation passed, talk to legislators. Don't go to the NRA, which is representing its membership.
Here's what the NRA and people like Alex Jones and others do.
Don't let me in with Alex Jones.
Fine. After each of these massacres, they come out. All the gun rights supporters come out very strongly and very vociferous and very powerful, and they basically instill fear. They say if everyone in the movie theater had been armed, if everyone at the school had been armed, it wouldn't have happened. And here's what happens. Gun sales and ammunition sales rocket, as we've seen in the last 3 weeks.
Oh, don't pass the buck, Piers. I mean, the truth is that the reason that people are buying a lot of guns right now, Piers, is because people on the left are talking very much about banning guns. And so a lot of people are saying, if I'm not going to have the right to purchase a weapon of my choosing in 2 months, I'm going to go and buy it now. This is very clearly what's going on.
Why did Ronald Reagan want these assault weapons removed?
I don't know why Ronald Reagan wanted these assault weapons removed.
You like Reagan, right?
I like Reagan in a lot of ways. He's not a god. I don't agree with him on everything.
Did you agree with him?
He also believed in the progressive tax rate. I don't believe in that.
Did you agree with him about assault weapons?
If I'll believe what you're saying, sure. I don't believe. I don't.
Did you know his position on assault weapons was?
I don't know what his position on assault weapons was. Why don't you tell me?
Well, let me read the letter in full. This was a letter that he penned along with Presidents Ford and Carter in 1994 to Congress. While we recognise that assault weapon legislation will not stop all assault weapon crime, statistics prove that we can dry up the supply of these guns, making them less accessible to criminals. We urge you to listen to the American public and to the law enforcement community and support a ban on the further manufacture of these weapons. That was Ronald Reagan.
Okay, so I mean, I can disagree with Ronald Reagan.
You keep framing this as a left-right debate.
No, I mean,
I'm putting it to you.
How is this a left-right?
One of the great right-wing presidents of modern times agreed with me.
So
it's not left or right, is it?
No, I mean,
unless you deliberately frame it in that way.
Okay, Piers.
In the way that the NRA through the 80s and 90s and this last
Piers, avoiding
decade
the breakdown of left and right
have deliberately tried to frame this as a left-wing attack on the American Constitution and the Second Amendment. Exactly what you've tried to do. You come in, you brandish your little book as if I don't know
my
what's
little
in
book.
there.
That's the Constitution of the United States. Our founding document.
I know
Piers.
what's in your Constitution.
Do you really?
I've been debating this for a very long time.
Then you should read the Second Amendment again.
I know the Second Amendment. What I haven't heard is one coherent reason why any civilian in America needs an AR-15 military-style assault weapon. Tell me why you need one.
I told you why the general population of America, law-abiding citizens,
why
need
do they
an
need
AR-15.
those weapons?
They need them for the prospective possibility of resistance to tyranny, which is not a concern today. It may not be a concern tomorrow.
Where are you expecting the tyranny to come from?
It could come from the United States because governments have gone tyrannical before.
Do you understand how absurd you sound?
See, here's where you go into the absurd and the bullying. You're absurd. You're stupid. I understand that.
I'm not the one that came in here and accused you of standing on the graves of dead children.
Because you're the one who's doing that.
Bullying.
Punching back twice as hard.
Bullying.
You know what I call it? Punching back twice as hard in the words of President Obama.
That's what I call bullying.
And this is astonishing.
What's astonishing
What's astonishing about it is that for weeks now, you have been saying that anybody who disagrees with your position is absurd, idiotic, and doesn't care about the dead kids in Sandy Hook. And then when I say that that's a bully tactic, you turn around and say, I'm bullying you for saying that. It's absurd. It's ridiculous.
Let me ask you again. What is the point of a civilian having an AR-15 assault weapon?
The point of a civilian having an AR-15 assault weapon, many of them are ex-military, right? I mean, I have military friends, and I don't have a problem with Colin Powell owning an AR-15 assault weapon.
And what is the point of a civilian owning them?
It depends on the civilian. If it's a criminal, they shouldn't own them.
No, forget criminals and mentally ill people.
No, but you can't separate that out.
An average civilian who hasn't got a criminal record or is mentally ill, why do they need one?
To protect against the possibility of eventual government tyranny. This was the purpose of the Second Amendment originally. It remains the purpose of the Second Amendment now, and pretending that governments have never gone usurpacious before from a democratic position.
You genuinely believe your own government is going to turn on you in a way that you require an AR-15 to challenge them? This is what you really believe
is going to happen? It may not turn on me. It may not turn on my children.
Is that what you think?
It may not turn on me. It may not turn on my children. But the fact is this. History is replete with democracies going tyrannical. It has happened. It happened in France in the 19th century. It happened in Spain in the last century. It happened in Germany. It happened in Italy. It has happened repeatedly throughout history. It happened in Japan.
The reason we cannot remove AR-15 assault weapons is because the threat of your own government turning on you in a tyrannical way.
It is because
that is your position.
It is because there are countervailing rights and responsibilities. And Piers, I don't understand why we can't come to it. Why can't we come to an agreement about reasonable law? You just want to demagogue the issue.
You have made your point crystal clear. People aren't stupid. They can make up their own minds. Ben Shapiro, thank you.
And you see, he stopped the argument because he was getting schooled. And I can guarantee you his producer was screaming in his ear, "Get off! Get off! He's making you look like a moron!" He just got schooled. And every time he tried to change the debate, sidetrack it, make it an emotional thing, whatever, Ben Shapiro had his number. Well done, dude. Very well done. Kudos to you. And that is how you deal with Piers Morgan. That's how you debate him. You don't have to yell and scream. I know this is an emotional issue. Trust me. I know. But yelling and screaming only makes us look like a bunch of idiots. Okay? There's a time for yelling and screaming. And trust me, when the time comes, then we can do the yelling and screaming. But if you're trying to win over, how does the military say it? Hearts and minds? Right? If you're trying to do that, you shouldn't go. Let me give an example. I'll even back up a little bit. Let me give an example. Everybody critiqued the military. Well, if you're going to go in hearts and minds, you shouldn't be bombing the crap out of villages, right? Right? Well, same thing here. So let's not forget, okay, that the general public who are kind of maybe on the fence aren't sure, right? We need them to pay attention and wake up. They don't know. You remember, a lot of people don't understand the Second Amendment. a lot of people have no idea that, like what Shapiro said, the last 2 minutes were the whole thing was great, but the last 2 minutes were probably one of the best parts, because he says to him, I still haven't heard one coherent argument, and Shapiro gives him one, and Piers Morgan repeats his the question again to try, and he did it to try to see if he can get a different answer. That way he could attack it, right? Oh, you just gave me a separate answer. I've seen him do this in other interviews and quote unquote interviews, and other quote unquote journalists do this too. People, talking heads, hatchet men, whatever you want to call them. Okay, and he tried tripping him up, and Shapiro wouldn't fall for it. See, in their eyes, their job, Morgan's job, is to sway the people that are on the fence, and also be, as I said before, the I guess you could say target. I'm trying to think of a better term for him, but he's going to be the guy that draws the fire, so that they can still. I mean, people are still going to go after Feinstein and other people, but Piers is the one making all the noise, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, so he's the one everybody's paying attention to. Now, I don't want to rant too much because I have a bunch of other audio I want to play for you. So, one of the side effects that the Second Amendment does have, besides being able to defend against tyranny and oppressive government and things like that, it also gives you the ability to be on an equal playing field with any bad guy who wants to do you harm. Like the old saying says, God created all men, but same cult made all men equal. And I'm not getting into an argument about religion or theology or anything else like that right now. It's an old saying, and you get my point. Everybody, you could have a 90-pound or 105-pound 90-year-old woman versus a 18-year-old guy who's 230 pounds and he's 6'6", and he's about to mug her and maybe rape her, and she pulls out a .357 and she puts 3 rounds through his chest and drops him. Well, guess what? Now they're equals, right? Because even though if she didn't have the gun, she would have been done for. But the gun was the great equalizer. I say it all the time. And look, nobody wants to take another human life, and there's plenty of evidence out there to show you that there's really responsible gun owners. I've talked about many situations with myself, people I know. I talked about the kid in the, I think it was the Clackamas Town Mall, where he had the guy in his sights and he got tunnel vision and he realized there were people behind him and he didn't take the shot because he didn't have a clean shot. That's a responsible shooter. But the media and the gun-grabbing morons would have you believe that guy was going to kill 18 or 19 innocent people while trying to kill the perpetrator because it's going to be like the Wild West. His actions, and I said this when I did the broadcast that night about it, his actions prove them wrong. That kid is a shining example that their lies and stuff, their argument are all garbage. And that's why they don't talk about it, because it disproves everything. Now, I want to get into the self-defense part of it, okay? Because there is tyranny to government, but as you saw, again, as I was just talking about the Clackamas Town shooting, the kid was able to at least draw his weapon, and that was an equal playing field, right? Even if the kid had an AR-15, it's still gun versus gun. It's not gun versus I'll throw my cheeseburger and fries at you from the food court, okay? So I want to play a few other clips. Now, this one is incredible. This guy is like a real-life Charles Bronson. And the reason I want to play this is so people can see how extreme it can get with bad people trying to do bad things to you, and that, yes, there is a need for weapons and to be able to defend yourself. Well, you don't need semi-automatics. And I'm going to play the difference between semi-automatics and fully automatics again for you before leaving for the night. But first, I want to play this. And if this story doesn't prove to you that people should have the right to defend themselves with firearms, I don't know what will. Listen to this.
2 would-be robbers were foiled today by a man, and some called him a real-life Charles Bronson.
I refuse to be a victim of violent crime.
For 14 years, Lance Thomas was a successful watch dealer in this West Los Angeles neighborhood, selling expensive luxury and vintage watches. That all changed following a series of armed robberies in the area, in which a number of shopkeepers were brutally murdered.
One associate said, "Lance, you better have a gun. There's a lot of, people getting killed in the neighborhood, and you should at least have a gun." I reluctantly said, "Okay," and put it in front of me. Now, this was in front of me, this watchmaker's bench. I put a .38 revolver right about here.
Within weeks of getting the gun, Lance found he needed it.
Over the other side of this watchmaker's bench, two clients, one client was waiting for me to find his watch, and I was going through the watches to see if his watch was ready to pick up. Two other male individuals came in the shop, stood behind him, knocked him on the head. He went down, and then they went up in a combat stance, at least one of them did, with a 9mm in his hand, and yelling at me, giving me his watches. What I did was I was looking through the watches, and I didn't do anything fast because he'd shot me if I'd have reached for something. Sure. So he's going, "Give me a watch, give me a watch." And and that was it. It's as simple as that. I just decided not to be a victim in an instant. I'm not the fastest gun in the West. I'm not Wild Bill Hickok. I was scared to death.
The man who tried to rob Lance was shot in the face, but he survived and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. His accomplice got away.
What if I didn't have the gun there? What if it's sitting on my desk behind me? What if the scenarios were endless, and I found myself, if it ever happened again, to reduce the probability of losing my life.
Lance did that by practicing at the gun range, training at a gym several days a week, and by working out gunfight tactics to every robbery scenario he could think of. He bought several more guns and hid them every 3 feet behind the showcase so that one would always be within reach if robbers struck again. 3.5 months later, they did.
It was 7:15 in the evening, and the store had 3 customers in it, an employee, and 2 individuals came in armed with I believe a Mach 10 and an automatic pistol.
All of a sudden, Lance said, "Hit the floor, Jerry." And I don't know how, nobody was holding on to me. I just went down.
Immediately came up, firing at both of them, and he firing at me as I came up.
In the middle of the gunfight, with 2 robbers inside the store and 2 others outside, Lance Thomas managed to call 911.
I need a police car at 12118 Santa Monica, robbery in progress. Where is this at? Santa Monica, the watch company. The watch company.
It's all slow motion. There's lots of flashes of light. Looking down the barrel of an armed robber, repeatedly firing his weapon point blank range. Trying to stop them from killing me and everybody in the shop.
Lance is very quick. I mean, very quick. And he doesn't have a fear that a lot of people have.
Lance shot and killed the 2 robbers, despite having been shot himself once in the neck and 3 times in the shoulder. He almost died that night in the hospital.
Let's go all the way back mentally to ground zero. I'm faced with an armed intruder. Now, I have to make a mental decision to be a victim of his mercy. Or exercise the right of self-defense and fight back. And in fighting back, part of that is the willingness to die and to kill. Hard choice.
After 2 gunfights, Lance Thomas decided additional precautions were necessary. He spent more time practicing drawing his gun. He also put in a surveillance camera, hired a part-time security guard, and upgraded his arsenal of guns. 2 years passed.
And then it happened again.
There's a 6'5" guy with a 9mm Glock in my face. He said, "Don't reach for it, I'll kill you."
And what did you think?
Reached for it immediately and got shot through the neck here, out the back. Was able to get my hand on a semi-automatic weapon and torque my wrist, and shot 3 times. He shot twice more. He died in the scene.
The robber was the third to die in as many shootouts at Thomas's store.
I went to the hospital, and it was, it didn't sever my spinal cord or my jugular. It just went in here and out here. So a Band-Aid sufficed, and I was back to work the next day.
He said, "Don't do anything or I'll kill you." So why do anything? If you hadn't reached for your gun, maybe you wouldn't have gotten shot. Maybe he would have gotten a few of your watches, but it would have been over.
It would have been up to him, wouldn't it? He had his finger on the trigger, and he intended to negotiate. There's no negotiation. My life is too precious for that.
Did you think after that incident, maybe, you know, things are getting out of control here. Yes. It's time to get out of town.
I put a double door in then. They came in anyway.
It would be Lance's fourth gunfight. Two robbers linked to one of LA's most violent gangs entered the store.
They pretended to open the front door to leave, turned around, said, "You're dead," and fired the weapons. But that wasn't quick enough. I killed them both.
Lance Thomas was totally justified in everything that he did.
Detective Lee Kingsford investigated the shootings.
All of the suspects had extensive criminal records. They knew what they were doing. They just didn't know who they were doing it against.
When Lance Thomas emerged from his store after the last shootout, neighboring merchants cheered.
I go over to Lance Thomas' place and look at the guy laying down beside the door, and I said to myself, "God damn, he's really tough."
What concerns me is that a lot of shopkeepers have armed themselves and viewed me as somewhat of a hero, and it's rather dangerous for them to, in my view, to take guns in their shop and expect to perform the same way I did, not knowing how I spent so much time and effort preparing.
Shortly after hosing the blood off the sidewalk in front of his watch store, Thomas closed up his business and went into seclusion.
When word reached him that gang members were out for revenge, Thomas closed his store for good. But he strongly believes he did the right thing in trying to defend himself.
A man must live by his principle, who he is, not what he is. In fact, isn't that why anybody remembers anybody? Who they are? Not what he owns or what he is or what his title is, but how they feel about him. There are things in this life more important than what we own, and that is the principle in which we live by.
By 1996, Lance Thomas had retreated from the world, running his watch business by appointment only from a location he asked Justice Files not to disclose. He's had no armed confrontation since, but as the arsenal that surrounds him suggests, his life will never be the same.
It's kind of made an old man out of me, out of a fun-loving young man, I can tell you that. And I understand what a soldier goes through when he encounters mortal combat. It's hell. It's something to be avoided. But if you have to do it, you must be responsible. Because I prepared myself so thoroughly, I was able to survive.
Also in 1996, Lance was one of only 2 Santa Monica, California residents to have a concealed weapons permit.
I think that the issuance of concealed weapons permits in any state of the union can have just cause and should be issued. However, most citizens that would raise a gun haven't been prepared to face the consequences of raising that gun. And I think the judicial system must never take the right away from citizens to bear arms and defend themselves. But I think that they should cause citizens to be more responsible when invoking that right.
Lance has invoked his right to defend himself with deadly consequences, and he recognizes the personal price he's paid.
Many people would refer to me as paranoid. I have reduced my contact with most people. Life has been one of seclusion, of tactical defense. Do I feel safer? I just want to feel alive.
And you can see the poor guy's obviously got PTSD from going through multiple gunfights in his watch shop. And Am I saying that people should be running around like Charles Bronson and Death Wish and taking people out? No. But what I'm trying to show by playing that is, look, this guy obviously, people were like, move. You heard what the one guy said, well, why don't you move? Well, that was his business. Why should he be forced out because of some dirtbag lowlife? How is that fair? How is that fair in the slightest bit? How is that right? Like, you should totally just, you know what? Look, I know that, I know that you've, had your business here for 20 years or 15 years or however long, in whatever case. Let's say you've had your business for 20 years, but there's thugs in the area, so you should pack up and leave. Well, why don't I just get a gun and protect myself? No. We don't want you to be able to protect yourself. Sir, just pack your stuff and go. It's time to go anyway. You don't need to stay here. I mean, that's the mentality. They want you be a victim, be a victim. You heard what he said. You have to decide and make that choice. Do you want to be a victim or do you want to survive? And he didn't want to be a victim. He wanted to survive, and he wanted to come out on top. Let me tell you something. When it's you or the other person, that situation, I don't wish it upon anyone. But it's like being in the Matrix. Time slows down, and you have to decide really quick what you want to do. And you heard what he said. I mean, he lived with the consequences. He got shot multiple times. So I'm not advocating the gunfight at the OK Corral, but again, the bad guys had guns, and you saw that if he didn't have a gun, he would have been dead. And by the way, he pointed out the fact that even after being shot in the neck by the one dude, he was able to twist his wrist and with a semi-auto get 3 rounds off and kill the guy. If he didn't have the semi-automatic technology, he wouldn't be able to do that. Okay? And with that in mind, I'm going to play again the audio of the difference between semi-automatic weapons and fully automatic weapons, just in case people haven't heard it, and to drive the point home. Here you go.
Hello, my name is Leroy Pyle. I'm a police officer in San Jose, California. And during most of my 25-year career, I've been involved in firearms training, a little training, education, and also competition. As a result, I've also gotten involved with private citizens using firearms, a lot of safety, schools, and a lot of competition. I'm familiar with some of the controversy involved with firearms now, a lot of emotions. In fact, we're about an hour and a half away from Stockton, California, where I'm sure you're aware of a recent tragedy. I don't mean to belittle that tragedy. I can share those emotions. About a week after that, I had 2 of my partners killed on the streets of San Jose, so I understand the emotions. But part of my job as a police officer for all these years has been to cut through the emotions and get to the facts. That's the only way you can settle an issue. You have to have the truth. And I'd like to share a little bit of the facts with you because I honestly feel that some of the emotions here have impaired any ability to make a good judgment. I have some firearms available that I'd like to show you. I have some in fully automatic, I have some in semi-automatic, and I have some that were designed for hunting. I'd like to show you a comparison, and I think if you have a little better understanding of what these firearms really are for, what they do, what they look like, you too can maybe cut through some of the emotions and make what I hope would be a good decision. The confusion and misunderstanding over firearms is a result of the mislabeling. I have firearms here on the table. I have a fully automatic assault rifle. And many times the press likes to use those words, trigger words, if I might add. Assault rifle, military, fully automatic. This is a fully automatic assault rifle. This is banned, it's prohibited, and limited almost virtually to police and military use. A citizen cannot go into the store and purchase this. And yet, this is usually one that's displayed on your television set. These are usually the terms used by the news media. Then they'll pick up a semi-automatic firearm. This is a semi-automatic firearm. The primary difference is that the assault rifle, the fully automatic firearm, you pull a trigger once and it will repeatedly fire and will continue to fire until all rounds are expended. This is a semi-automatic firearm. You fire once with each pull of the trigger. If you notice, these 2 firearms look alike. They look very much alike. They operate entirely differently. This one is legal, semi-automatic. This one is an illegal, fully automatic. They look alike. Here, I have a hunting rifle. This is also semi-automatic and one used for hunting game. This also, being semi-automatic, fires 1 round with each pull of the trigger. If you notice, these 2 do not look alike, but they function alike. They are virtually the same, only cosmetically different. It's important to keep that in mind. A person will say, this is fully automatic. The uninformed, most of the time the press, will refer to this as a fully automatic assault rifle and this as a fully automatic assault rifle. Please, by definition, this is the assault rifle. This is the only one that's fully automatic. It's prohibited for purchase in the United States except by police and law enforcement. Let me show you exactly what I mean. I've got my hearing protection here. We'll take these firearms out and I'll shoot them one at a time, and you can see for yourself just exactly how they operate and exactly how they're alike in some ways and very different in other ways. This is the fully automatic firearm. It's an AK-47. Primary feature is with one pull of the trigger, it will fire repeatedly. It'll fire until you either release the trigger or you expend all the rounds. Let me show you. This is a semi-automatic firearm. A look-alike, but very much different. One pull of the trigger, you get one round. You get another round, you have to pull the trigger again. Let me show you that. This, too, is a semi-automatic. The feature with semi-automatic, one pull of the trigger, one round. If you notice, the action, very similar to the other firearms, but very much different from the fully automatic rifle. This, too, is a hunting rifle. Again, one pull of the trigger, one round. A semi-automatic is just that, semi-automatic. One pull of the trigger, one round. That's a technology that's over 100 years old. If you ban that technology, you ban about 20 million firearms. Let's take a little closer look at them. This is the semi-automatic technology I referred to. You notice cosmetically there is a difference, but if you get to the working parts, the actual action, they're identical. In fact, let me show you just exactly how identical. This is the military look-alike. If you take off a cover, the working part compared to this hunting rifle, take off the cover, and the working parts are identical. Again, semi-automatic technology. One pull of the trigger, one round. Entirely different from the military fully automatic assault rifles. I'd like to show you how a simple cosmetic change could lend to the confusion in this attempt to try to define something as an assault rifle. This is a very popular, very common semi-automatic rifle. It's in a very popular and common caliber, that's caliber .223. I'd like you to watch while I just change the looks and see if you can't see how it might get a little confusing. As you can see, just changing from wood to plastic makes a big difference in its appearance and probably would even change a person's opinion. And is that what makes a difference, whether it has a wooden stock or if it has a plastic stock and maybe a bipod? Actually, just like in those other firearms that I was demonstrating, the action is the same. The semi-automatic mechanism is common to millions of firearms, not just the rifle. I'm sure any of you shoot trapper skeet, you know that semi-automatic shotgun is very, very popular. For home defense or for target practice, the semi-automatic pistol is very, very popular. In fact, much more popular nowadays than the revolver is. Terms like assault rifle are hard to define. I don't know what an assault rifle is. I doubt very much if a member of BATF could tell you exactly what an assault rifle is.
Any type of legislation that's framed and drafted in relation to assault, what we're referring to here this morning is assault or paramilitary type weapons, there will be an inherent difficulty in drafting this. And the difficulty is that it's going to be very hard to draw a clear distinction between what we have as an assault type rifle and a semi-automatic sporting weapon. The assault weapon has a very menacing appearance to it, but this gun technologically, as far as how it fires, is pretty much the same as a sporting semi-automatic rifle, with the exception that this firearm has an exotic type appearance to it. Put a standard type stock on it, and remove the bayonet mount, it would also even have the appearance of a sporting type weapon.
Frequently hear reference to the fact that a semi-automatic rifle can be easily converted to fully automatic. That's not true.
Why? Because these military-style assault weapons of today are not easily and readily convertible without extensive knowledge and modifications to the weapon and or a substitution of available parts. Now, in my 12 years within the unit, considering the enormous amount of firearms that we have taken into custody, and that's over 50,000, I would say, and these include the ones from the hardcore gangs and from the drug dealers, our unit has never, ever had one AK-47 converted, one Ruger Mini-14 converted, an H&K 9193 never converted, an AR-180 never converted. So this media blitz of many of these assault weapons or supposedly military-style weapons are being converted to full automatic is not true.
So millions of law-abiding citizens own this semi-automatic technology. It would really be a shame if you legislated against that technology, and it would be really sad if that legislation was as a result of just some confusion and misunderstanding, and especially by mislabeling. I hope I've been able to help you with some of this information.
Now, what we need to do is, I would say, if anybody's interested, okay, at all, I say we burn a copy of this, and we burn, I don't know how many people are in Congress, in the House, or whatever. We burn a couple, 600-700 copies, some extra ones. And I say we ship it out to everyone up there. Ship it out to if people want to burn multiple copies, whatever. Maybe let them get 10 or 20 or 30 copies of the same thing. Let them get this. It's only like 10 minutes. And let them see the video. I have it up on Federal Jack Tube on YouTube if you want to rip it, and you can burn it on a disc and show it and send it into your congressman, your representative, or whatever. Show it to your family. Do a screening. And I urge you to get the video because it's better to see it. I cut, for time purposes, when he disassembles the rifle, I cut that like 2.5 minutes or whatever, 2 minutes, where he disassembles it and puts it together in a different, he takes the quote-unquote assault rifle apart and turns it into a hunting rifle. So I cut that out because you don't need to hear him just taking it apart and, putting it together for, 2 minutes on air. But it's good for somebody to see that so they can understand. They get a visual. If you go up on Federal Jack Tube, it's semi-auto versus fully auto. And you know what I'll do is I'll make a downloadable link to the video on Federal Jack, and I'll spread it out and I'll put it out. And I'll let everybody know on Sunday what it is. And I say we burn copies of this and send it out all over. Send it to the press and just inundate people with it. Have screenings. Show everybody. It's a 10-minute video. They can take 10 minutes to watch it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to this special extra hour broadcast. I will catch you all again tomorrow, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Till then, I love you all. I'm out of here.